Hey guys, MC Stu here, and today I am going to go over a budget build for the Risian Luxury Cruiser. So I unlocked this ship 2 days ago. Most of you are probably right there or about to complete this event, and we'll have this available to you as well. So I'm actually going to do just a series of videos on a couple different builds that can do pretty good on this ship. I think it's going to shine at some things and maybe not as well. Well, definitely not as well at other things. For instance, this is not a torpedo build ship platform that would do very well for you. But all in all, it is a pretty good all-around balanced ship, beamboat, and you can do quite a few things with it here. So before we jump into it, again, I just want to take the opportunity, as always, to thank everybody that watches these videos and likes and subscribes, gives me the thumbs up, and of course to the community for everybody that adds in all the additional info. There's just such a wealth out there of knowledge around this community. It's very nice, and I just want to say thank you as always. I also am going to be doing a giveaway for a Infinity Tier 6 ship. I'll give you some more details about that at the end of the video, but it'll be similar to the ones in the past that are done through the Discord. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it here. So off the bat, I have the vanity shield, just so if I get questions on that. From with the right glare on it, it almost looks like the mission drop one. That's the Riemann shield, but it is not. This is the platinum shield that was given away a while back. On this map, it looks kind of shiny. Most maps, it looks more of a gray with black. But in any case, that's what we have on it. So the criteria on this build was to be as budget as possible. So we skipped using any lobby items and any kind of lobby traits or any of those kinds of things. I did use 2 C-store traits. So they're, to put this together in the exact same way, you will have to spend either a little bit of money or do some grinding for the Zen through Dill, or if you've participated in some of the events and have picked up some of the coupons, you can use them for these as well. The traits that I used are from the previous video that I did a while back. I'll put a link in the description of my my top 4 C-store ships and traits. And you'll see an ongoing theme in any of the build videos that I do, that I generally stick within those suggestions, right? So I'm not going to suggest traits to you and then show you a bunch of builds that don't use that. So generally, what you're going to see from me, if you're new to the channel, are builds that they're not going to break any records, but they're going to allow you to have a lot of fun, do very well, and be able to play the advanced, TFOs and missions and, anything you want to do in the game on that advanced level, and even elite if you have proper teams for some of those TFOs. In fact, I ran this ship with this build in an elite last night and was pretty surprised. Again, it didn't break any records, but it did very well, and we'll talk about that when we do the ISA baseline run on it. So this is a phaser beam overload build. It's similar to some of the last ones that I've done, with some changes with consoles from the last event, and there's none of those lobby items. And again, the lobby items that I would use on this in the subsequent builds are all also going to come from previous videos. So again, if you've been picking those up, you'll be in luck on these next videos that I'll put out that will include those. It won't be budget. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So I went and farmed out some phaser beam arrays, just basic ones. I didn't want to use anything that was lockbox weapon. Not that it would really matter. And I do have a full set of, they're the linked ones. I don't have any sensor linked ones, but I have just a variety of the other ones. I like the way they look. But there is, especially on this level, there is no difference, between a crafted or mission drop phasers and any other lockbox phaser you might get. When you get up into the real high-end min-maxing, and if you're doing specific things like maybe with tanking and stuff like that, then it can make a little bit of difference. But generally speaking, phasers are phasers. You just use either what you have, or if there's something in particular that you like, or if you are trying to kind of min-max a particular thing, then there might be some procs or some passives that say, the linked phasers would offer you as well. So I just went with just basic Mark 12s. These you can either, in a lot of cases, pick up from your fleet. You can craft these, and there are a couple mission drops that will drop these. So I used 4 of those total. And then I filled in the rest with rep gear and mission drops. So up front, we're using the wide angle dual phaser beam bank. And this is from the Discovery rep, along with the dark matter quantum torpedo, also from the Discovery rep. And this is a repeating theme. These are just excellent. And this isn't something I do, for you guys in terms of using these sets, in terms of, grind for this and you'll be able to get the most bang out of it. You just do get the most bang out of it. So on my paid account, this is my free account, a combination of either the 2-piece or the 3-piece is on almost every build. It's that good. So on this one, I'm using the 3-piece along with the Lorca console down here, and we'll get to the set bonus once we get down to the consoles and take a look at those. Next, I'm using my standard space set. So we're using the colony deflector for the critical chance and critical severity. We are using the competitive engine for the cooldown on tactical abilities, and also for the flight speed and turn rate boost that you get anytime you use a tactical ability. And again, just to note, there are 2 other variations of this that are geared towards science or towards engineering, and they essentially do the exact same thing. It just cools down engineering or science abilities depending on which flavor you pick. Next, I am using the deuterium stabilized warp core, and because it's a beam overload build, I like this one. This one's also craftable and easy to get, but I'm using this for the minus 15% weapons cost. And again, just to note, you want to make sure on your power, especially if you're doing any kind of directed energy weapons, cannons, or anything like that, this needs to be maxed out. If you turn this down and you hover over that weapon and you check it, turn it down, turn it up, and check it as you're doing that, you're going to see a huge reduction in the amount of damage output that any of those energy weapons are doing. So you want this maxed. I personally like to have my speed maxed out. I like to move around quick. Other people's like to put a little bit into shields, and you could do that to get a little bit more out of the Tilly shield. Or if I don't know, you were using some other consoles where you needed some more aux, and there's some situations where you could do that as well. But this is my preference in terms of this secondary thing that I like to put the power in. But primarily, your weapons need to be number 1 and make sure those are maxed. Next, and lastly, on the space set, we have the Tilly shield, and this great shield offers good protection, and this has a boost that it gives your weapons based on your shield power. So what it does is it gives us an increase, let's see here, it's an increased damage to the enemy shields, and this is based on how high you turn up your shield power. So my shield power is at as low as I can put it. I do have some bonus stuff coming into here from just random consoles and things. I didn't do anything to specifically, hey, I want to get a little bit of bonus. It just is how it worked out. And so I'm still, even with it turned all the way as low as I can get it, I'm still getting that extra 11.5% increase in damage to the enemy shield. So very effective, even if you're not running a lot of shield power. Next, I am running the Trilithium Enhanced Omnidirectional. This comes from the mission Beyond the Nexus, and I'm running this with a 2-piece console that also comes from that mission, and we'll get to those 2-piece bonuses here in just a moment. For my devices, I'm running the Kobayashi Maru, and this was from an event that happened a while back. If you don't have this, it's not the end of the world. If I didn't have this spot would just be empty. I mean, there's not really anything else that I would put there. Generally, 3 is kind of the minimum, these other 3 items. But for filler, this is a great one. If I call this in, and in fact I can do it on this map, it'll show up and it'll start spitting out little buffs that'll hit my ship and give me a little bit of extra of whatever it happens to be. They're just random. So, and it'll also affect your team, so it'll give those boosts to your teammates as well. Next, I am running a mine in the back of this one, and this is kind of a weird kind of mixture, and this is something I kind of I don't know, adjusted from Augie's Torp build. This would be an excellent combination on a full-on Torp kinetic build, as it is on Augie's video. I've been using it on my free-to-play account quite a bit now, along with this console here, because of the boosts that we get from that. And we'll get to this here in just a moment once we get through the last of these. I think I skipped over and started going Kobayashi Maru and then back. So sorry about that. So let's make sure we hit the mine here. So the mine launcher. So this is a rep item from the new Kara. And what this does is, like most of the mines, it's going to do a kinetic damage, but it's also going to put one of the Tholian webs around the enemy ship, and it's going to hold them there. And that basically just slows them down, puts on basically a movement debuff, and it registers as a hold. And we'll see why that's important in just a moment when we take a look at this other console I had just mentioned. For the other three device slots, we have energy amplifiers, because this is a beam build or energy build, so plus 20% bonus damage for 22.1 seconds, has a 1-minute cooldown. We are using the Deuterium Surplus, and this is for the extra speed boost. You get a little bit of defense rating, although I don't think that really makes a big difference against NPCs. And then lastly, we are using the Subspace Field Modulator, and this is here for the damage resistance boost that you'll get for 15 seconds while using it. So let's take a look at the engineering consoles. So we are using the House Martog, a defense configuration. This comes from a mission drop, and let's take a look at what that is. I can't remember off the top of my head. I will use that a lot with the two-piece with the Disruptor Omni that comes from that same mission. It comes from the New Frontiers arc, and it is Brushfire. So if you run this mission, you'll just get that console, and then you'll have a choice to pick another item. What you want to pick is the omnidirectional. The torpedo is not real great, but the two-piece gives you a huge crit chance boost, and if you're doing a disruptor build, this is definitely worth getting, especially on the budget level. This is not a disruptor build, so I'm not running that other omni. All right. I was just making sure I actually did hit the record button here. Sorry for that pause. So I am running this console basically for the survivability and the boost that it gives to our maximum hit points, our hull, which helps a trait that we're using from Tyler's Duality, a rep trait, which we'll take a look at when we get there. This is giving us additional shield power, so that's where some of that shield bonus is coming from in the power settings that we noticed earlier. This is giving me additional engine power, which again, I'm a big fan of moving quickly, and it's giving us maximum shield capacity, which is not a real big deal to me at all. And then we're getting a 19% flight turn rate, which is great. It's always nice to be able to move in position. It's less important because this isn't a forward-facing or directional-facing build, but you still need to stay, broadside to get the full effect of all of your weapons, and being able to pilot and make adjustments quickly, especially as the map is changing, is extremely important to me. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Tholian web spinner array. This came from the last event, and this is the reason that I am running the mines in the back. It's been somewhat of an experiment, and I think it does pretty well. You could probably go with a whole different configuration and still do very well on this build if you don't have this. This is going to make or break it, but what it gives us, so the passives on it are physical damage, which again on this build is not really a big deal. Tetryon damage, which again, sorry about that, on this build does not matter whatsoever. Control, I don't really have any control on this build either, so that doesn't matter. So question is, why are we using it? So the last thing on the passive here is attacks against held foes gain 50% bonus damage. And if you watched my last video on Cat 1 versus Cat 2 bonus damage, you'll be aware at the benefit of bonus damage. And just to clarify from that video as well, that video was just explaining the differences between the two. Not that one is better than the other, or that, you only want Cat 2 bonus damage. You have to have Cat 1 as well for Cat 2 to be bonus. So just bear that in mind. If you go back, if you haven't watched that video, watch it. But so basically with these mines that we're spitting out here and being able to use relocate mines, and when you look at the run that I did with this, you'll find I'll go kind of diving into the enemy, especially if I can get up to groups of enemies and relocate the mines, or at the end I'm right up against the attack cube, because I want these mines to come out of my ship and the enemy be within the chase range. So these mines will go and attack and put that web around the enemy, and that will hold the enemy. And if the enemy is held with this console here, I'm going to get 50% bonus damage against that enemy. I mean, that is just a huge boost. And I think well worth slotting a mine on a non-kinetic build like this. So again, it's not going to make or break it. This is just kind of the flavor, I guess, of the month that I'm kind of playing with, and I feel like it's doing pretty decent. And I think the results on this are going to surprise you, especially with half my weapons being Mark 10 or more than half my weapons. I'm sorry, not Mark 10, Mark 12. This thing performed really well. And I think it's from, having this console, being able to get that 50% bonus damage boost. But it really comes down to your piloting. If you're staying really far away and you're spitting out mines and not many of those mines are hitting enemies and holding them, then it's going to be a waste. So, if you're maybe in a new ship or you're newer to the game, you're still working on piloting, and you have this console, maybe you start, try it out. I mean, try it out and see. But you do have to take into account, your piloting, especially and getting into range, managing not taking too much damage while you're doing that, so that your mines will hit the enemy and proc this console so you can take advantage of that 50% bonus damage. Now, the clicky on this, again, being that it's not a physical or kinetic build, there's just not a huge boost that we get from this. So on the parse, the actual clicky on this did not do real well. But I believe that this does hold the target as well. So this will give you a clicky that says, I want to hold that target. And by default, now you're going to get that 50% bonus damage that is in the passives. So all the other effects on it are, kind of whatever. When you see the parse, I mean, it did not do real well. I mean, it did like 900 damage. It was not very much. If this was a torpedo build and you're stacking torpedo or kinetic damage and physical damage, those kinds of things, the clicky on this would do much, much, much better. And I've seen it do, like, I was running with Augie last night and he was running this and he was getting like 90k out of it, which is just crazy. And that's from the clicky. On this particular build, this clicky is really here to be able to have a selectable target that you want to put a hold on so you can take advantage of that passive. So all your other weapons will do that 50% bonus damage. So I generally are going to use it on the gate, or I'm going to use it on the attack cube at the end, or whatever you're running. You'll want to use it on, a larger boss that's going to have, more hit points that you need to, put as much damage into as possible so you and the team can take it down. So that is the combo of these two items. Like I said, it's kind of off meta, or kind of a weird thing to put with this, but I'm finding that it's working really well for me. So if you have this console, you can grab this mine here from your rep, and it changes up the dynamic, right? Because if you've been beam boating, you're beam boating, you're broadsiding, you're nosing in for your torpedoes. This adds a whole nother dynamic in that piloting, and it's a lot of fun. So I definitely, if you have the console, try it out and see what you think. Okay, so next we have our second piece of the trilithium set here. So we're running this with the Omni. The console itself's passives are basically another survivability kind of boost. For the most part, you get some power transfer, hull restoration, and hull capacity. So this is giving us more hit points. That also helps us with the Tyler's duality, and is giving us additional survivability. Now, the two-piece from this is giving us an additional fire cycling haste. So basically our weapons are firing faster. And I've touched on this before, especially on a beam overload build. Your beam overload, when you're in that mode, your weapons are going to do a lot more damage, but they do fire slower. So anything you can do to make your weapons fire faster is going to give you that much more damage, and you'll be able to take much more advantage of that particular firing mode that does so much extra damage while you're in it. So this is a great combo to use for that, or any kind of build that you're really trying to boost, the fire cycling haste and get as many shots out as quickly as possible. And this is something that just continually runs. So it's just plus 5% all the time for all of your weapons, or all of your energy weapons, that is. All right, and next, this is a mission drop item, quantum phase converter. This is here primarily for the extra phaser damage. So this is a Cat 1 boost of plus 23.8%. It's giving us additional auxiliary, which again doesn't matter on this, the way I have my power configured. It's also giving us drain, which on this build is really kind of doesn't really matter either. This is a mission drop from the mission. I think is it Sunburn? Am I getting that right? future-proof sunrise. Sunrise. And it actually is a part of a set, and the set is pretty good. So if you're new and you need weapons and things like that, you can get a phaser beam array from this. You can get phaser cannons from this. There's a halfway decent torpedo. This would all be really, really starter gear until you start to unlock some of your rep stuff, and then you can start getting the disco rep gear like the torpedo and some of those other things. The phaser itself is not bad. Again, like I said earlier, this is just as good as what you're going to get from Crafted, and it's free. The mission is fairly quick, and it's not a terrible mission to run. The console is great. Again, this gets outclassed later down the road, but it's a great item to have in your inventory, especially if you're doing these builds on the budget level. All right, moving on here. Next, we have the 0-point energy conduit. This is from the Romulan rep, and this is primarily here for the extra critical chance. So with it fully upgraded, you're getting an extra 2.4% critical chance. We are getting additional power to each of our subsystems as well, which is very important because beam overload, when you go into that mode, it's going to draw even more power than it normally would. So normally a beam array is going to draw 10%. Right now we're only drawing we're drawing less than that, or is it 11%? I think it's 11%, or 11 power, not percent. Right now we're only drawing 8.7, and that's because of the warp core is reducing that. So one way to help with that is to reduce what the drain is on your weapons power, and then the other way is to continue to stack extra bonus weapons power on this here. So you'll see I have this maxed at 100, but it's sitting at 125 with the bonus, and there is an overflow pool. So let's say the overflow is 10, and let's just say I fire a weapon that's pulls 5, I'm still going to sit at 125 because I had 10 that's not being used. It's just up here. It's not accounted for until it starts to be drawn. And if you don't pay attention to that, when you start, using your beam overload, not only does your weapon fire slower, but it's pulling power out of this. And if you start dropping this down, your damage output for your energy weapons is going to dramatically go down. So that's the other thing. Like if you're at going, full speed, and let's demonstrate this here. All right, so I've slowed myself down, but I still have, this power going up here, right? So it's draining all my power from everywhere else, putting it in engines. If you're going to do that and, head into a fight, you want to click out of that just, a little bit before you get there and give your power settings time to get back up. Because if you go flying into the middle of the mess and come out of full speed and start firing, your weapons are going to be doing next to no damage for a few seconds until that boost all the way up. And if you started using abilities just as you did that as well, you're going to get very little out of those than if you would have waited a few extra seconds, let this charge up, then click your abilities and start engaging the enemy. So just bear that in mind on your power settings and managing those power settings. So getting that boost out of this is a nice little extra. And then again, this also gives us drain, which is really inconsequential on this build. Next, we have the assimilated module. This is here for the extra critical chance and severity, 1.2% and 12.1% for the critical severity. We're getting 5 extra weapons power out of this, which is great. Starship drain, or I'm sorry, control, which doesn't matter. And the starship damage control. Okay, so that is a hull restoration. So that's nice to have a little bit of extra recovery there if you're down. Generally, though, that's only going to start happening when you're out of combat. So that's not going to matter while you're taking fire. So you'd have to disengage for that particular starship stat to make any difference for you. So bear that in mind as well. And then, as I said, this has also control expertise, which again doesn't matter. This is from the Omega rep. So this is a rep item that you can get here. All right. Next, we are using the Approaching Agony. This is something you can get off the exchange, very inexpensive. It's giving us an extra 15% phaser damage, Cat 1, so it's giving us a nice little extra onto our Cat 1 damage for phaser. We're getting a plus 1.5 critical chance, which is excellent. Critical chance is our friend, along with severity. And then the clicky on it is really nice as well. So it creates a field at the location that you've targeted. So let's say you target a ship and you fire it. It's going to shoot this little kind of fireball at them, and it's it's going to explode into this very large field that's going to run for 50 seconds, and it is going to affect anything that it's in contact with. It's going to do phaser damage to them over time. It's also going to give a negative 25% all damage resistance to the target, 25% chance to disable the target as well. So this is a nice item here because it's giving you crit chance. It's boosting your phaser. The clicky does phaser damage, and it also debuffs the enemy. None of the stats are like huge, so it's not like if you don't have this, it's not going to work. It just synergizes with, you know, the entire build, or pretty much any kind of phaser build it synergizes with very, very well. And it's pretty inexpensive on the exchange. Bear in mind, when I say some of these things, sometimes they get a little more expensive. Wait a couple days, they come back down. These items are inexpensive because they're extremely plentiful. People that are opening boxes looking for ships and stuff, they're getting tons of these kinds of items. So, all right, moving on. Next, we have the M6 computer. This comes off of a ship that you can actually purchase from the vendor for dilithium. And I apologize, off the top of my head, I cannot remember what it's called. I have a whole video on this particular console and where to get it. I will link that in the description for you guys. This is essentially the poor man's domino is what it is. So when you click this for 15 seconds, you are going to get 15% bonus to all damage, which is a nice little boost. You can get 25% cooldown reduction for tactical bridge officer abilities, which is great. And really, most importantly on this build, this is a 20% fire cycling haste for all weapons. So this actually also includes torpedoes. All of your weapons that are firing will fire 20% faster than they normally would while this is running, getting plus 30 accuracy and plus 30 defense. So this is a great item. The ship that this comes off of, you can get it for dilithium, and I believe it's around 75,000 dilithium, which isn't too bad. I mean, you could pick that up if you're even with just one tune in, 8 or 9 days. So excellent item, definitely worth having for energy weapon builds on the budget level. Next, in the tactical consoles, we're using 2 fleet vulnerability locators, both phaser. Both of these fully maxed out are giving us 39.4 phaser damage, and they're giving us an additional 2% critical chance for both of these. Lastly, we have the Lorca's custom firing control, and this is here for a whole lot of reasons. This is an excellent console. I can't think of one build I'm not running this on either one of my accounts or any of the tunes. You're getting almost 4% critical chance. You're getting plus 7.9 weapons power. We are getting 157.5 starship shield penetration, which is excellent to that skill. Console by itself is excellent. It gives you one of the largest boosts in the game by itself to critical chance. This is being used in conjunction with the wide angle and with the dark matter. And let's take a look at the set bonuses. So the first 2-piece on this is going to give us a stacking critical severity boost. Every time we get a critical hit, it's going to give us 1% critical severity, and it lasts for 20 seconds, and it resets every time you get it. So every time you get a critical hit, you're going to get an extra stack, and it's going to reset the timer, maxing out at 25%. So if you're running anywhere between 30 to 50% critical chance, this is going to add up very quickly, max out, and you'll be running with an extra 25% critical severity, which is a nice boost. The 3-piece on here, what it does is it fires a torpedo at any enemy that is under 50% health. That's within 10 kilometers, and it's spherical, right? So it's almost like an invisible omnidirectional torpedo launcher that this does. So it fires one of the dark matter torpedoes at any enemy that is under 50%, and that can happen once per second. No more than 1 torpedo per enemy is the way that this works. Nice little extra. The 3-piece bonus is really inconsequential to the build. All 3 of these items are on here because all 3 of the items are worth it by themselves, and the 2-piece is definitely worth it and intentional. The 3-piece is just kind of an added, hey, I get it because I'm using all 3 of them, but that's not the point of having all 3 of the items from this 3-piece set. They are all very good items for this particular build on their own. All right, so let's just take a quick look at some of the stats here. So sitting still, now this is a Romulan. I am using RSOs for all of my bridge officers, which is a huge advantage when it comes to critical chance, critical severity. So my critical chance, I'm at almost 50. Critical severity is kind of low, but bear in mind I'm getting another 25% added to that as soon as that 2 piece starts to stack up that we just went over from the disco set here that we're using. So that starts to build up pretty quick and gets us to about where we want to be. So it is a little low there. The ship is a little bit low on the tactical consoles. This is my free-to-play account, and I only have 1X coupon left, so I didn't want to use it yet until I either knew that we were getting more sometime soon, or I don't know. I just didn't want to use it yet, so I didn't use it on this ship. And I'm not saying this ship's not worth using it. It's just I have to really watch my resources on this account because I put $0 into it. So I haven't used it yet. If you did, you could add, another, vulnerability exploiter, which would build that up a little bit more and get a little bit more out of that. Maybe even on this build, I could probably afford to maybe drop one of the locators and go with an exploiter. And if it was X, maybe 2 of the exploiters and just 1 locator would get me a little more evened out here. But again, I'm happy with the way that that this was set. So also for a fairly large ship, this thing flies and turns pretty darn good. Now, granted, I have my power settings max, so the speed on this ship that I have it set at is 65, and that's just base. That's without activating tactical ability, which boosts me up quite a bit. And the turn rate's pretty good too at 61. That's not bad for a cruiser. All right, let's take a quick look at the skills. These are the same. I generally don't move these around. I generally don't move them around at all. This particular character is never going to do science. Well, not anytime soon is going to do science. Sorry, Nick. We'll play after, buddy. And so he is geared for tactical, for, beams, cannons, and at some point maybe torpedoes. And this will not change at all for any of those particular roles. So that's what that looks like. My specializations, we are running strategist and we are running intel for our specializations there. All right, let's take a look at our traits. So on the traits, let's start with the personal space traits. I am using a lot of lockbox ones. I did not get them out of lockboxes. I was grinding and would buy them off the exchange. Sometimes they're reasonable. Sometimes they can be a little bit expensive. It kind of depends, like not Fragment, but Intel Attaché. I got this before like anyone knew about it. They were like really cheap when this lockbox came out on the exchange. I think people got them, threw them up, didn't know. So I bought all the ones that came. They were really, really cheap. And then when people realized, man, this is an excellent one, it went to like 40 million. Then that got added into the choice packs and the price came down. But they can fluctuate between 10 and 20 million. So a lot of these are going to cost you a little bit, and you will have to do some grinding in order to get the EC to purchase them. But and putting together these budget builds, I mean, I could, not put any of this stuff together. Basically, I'm not putting builds together for people that started yesterday, right? I'm trying to give you a good place as a new player and started yesterday to work towards that you could obtain within the next month or so. If you're playing the game at least somewhat often, throughout the week and stuff. So let's just go ahead and take a look at those. But I just wanted to give that disclaimer because I am using some stuff that you're going to have to save up and buy off the exchange. It's free in real life money. So that's something. All right. So first one we're using is adaptive defense. And I'm not sure why that's there. I wanted to have adapted offense. Okay, that is there as well. So that was filler. Okay, so that is correct. So this is giving us 40% damage resistance rating divided by the number of foes targeting me. So giving us some survivability. Adapted offense is giving us a stacking critical chance over time and critical severity. It's a nice little boost to help build up where some of those numbers were lacking, sitting still, at least lacking from the standpoint of, the in-game meta, if you will, right? So if you look at my crit chance, or even my crit chance is extremely high. My crit severity, in my opinion, is kind of low, but for a lot of players, that's actually really high. So when I say that, it's relatively speaking that I'm making up for some low numbers there. So I do understand that that's not low. It's just you can get it much, much higher. All right, we are using beam training. This is for the extra 5% bonus damage. Next, we are using a good day to die, and what this does is it turns your captain's ability here, go down fighting, into a clicky that can be used anytime. And generally what happens is you have to be under 50% hull in order for this to be clickable, so it's grayed out. And when you do click it, it gives you a nice little boost to your resistance rating, but it also gives you a 50% bonus all damage, which is very, very nice. And so being able to use this now at any time you want, as opposed to when you're getting your butt kicked, is a nice little extra. And that's what a good day to die does for you by having that slotted. Next, we are using Fleet Coordinator. This is giving us 2% bonus damage for ourselves and any teammates. So most TFOs, not all, but most of them, there's going to be 5 of you total in there. So this is going to be an extra 10% bonus damage. Next, we are using Innocuous, and this is here to give us a little bit of extra critical severity and threat reduction. So threat reduction is our friend. This build does have more in the way of heals than what I normally have on my ships. But even with that, reducing that threat is huge. The less threat you're taking, the less damage you're taking, the less you have to heal. And if you're able to really build out towards that, you can focus a lot more of what you would be using to potentially heal yourself on things that are going to buff your damage output, killing the enemy faster, and then you need even less threat reduction. So it's kind of a circular thing there, a chicken the egg thing. Next is the Intelligence Attaché, and as I stated before, this is just awesome. So on Weapons Critical Strike, restore 2% of Captain's ability recharge. So where this is important, and especially on a build where you have, let's just call it 30 plus critical chance. So I have critical chance of 50 on this. That means every other shot, essentially, I'm getting a critical hit. And as that happens, Captain's abilities like Attack Pattern Alpha or Go Down Fighting, these recharges are reduced by that 2%. And so if I'm constantly getting that adds up really quick. And so that's why these items are on my spam bar. If I did not have this trait here, these items would be items that I click. Because the cooldowns are somewhat longer on them, so we're at 40 seconds, which isn't terrible, but Attack Pattern Alpha, that's, I think, stock, okay, so it's 2 minutes. That's pretty good chunk. But even in a 2-minute run, with being able to have this trait on here, I'm able to use this multiple times, because every time you're getting that critical hit, it's shaving 2% off that recharge time constantly. So that's why these are in the spam bar, when otherwise I would have them up and clickable. Same thing with this one here, Brace for Impact. I'm using a Starship trait, and we'll get to that in a moment, but this is a captain's ability that is clickable to give us an extra 20% bonus damage. And by having this available and getting critical hits, these recharges are going to dramatically go down. And you'll be able to use these items much, much more often. If you don't have this, I would recommend clicking these so you can click them at the right time to get the most out of them. If you do have Intelligence Agent Attaché, you can put them in your spam bar if you're using one, and as long as you're engaging a lot and getting those critical hits, you are going to see those come up quite a bit. Next, we have Operative. This is here for the extra critical chance, critical severity. Another very good one is Terran Targeting. This is giving us just a straight boost to our critical severity of plus 15%. Nice boost for just taking up one of these slots like this. And then lastly, we have Duelist Fervor, and this is giving us whenever you or a teammate kills an enemy, we're getting plus 5% all damage for 10 seconds. This does restart every time you get that, and you have a maximum stacks, I believe, of 3. So because you get plus 5 accuracy rating for 10 seconds, then it says effects stack 3 times. I'm assuming that's both effects. If you can confirm that, let me know. I'm pretty sure. I just think it's supposed to be on the next line down, not going off of the accuracy rating line there. A little confusing, but if you've been playing the game long enough, that won't surprise you at all. So Cat 1 boost, and if it's, I'm assuming it's stacking 3 times. I'm pretty sure it is. So it's basically, once it stacks all the way up, it's plus 15% Cat 1 boost. All right, Starship traits. So we're using, like I said, 2 Sea Store ships, and these are the 2 in order of the top 4. that I made that last, or not last, but a video a while back on, and it's number 1 and number 2, because these can really be used on basically everything. So the first one is going to be emergency weapons cycle, and what this is doing is on emergency power to weapons, which is the first thing in our bar here. This is going to give us a huge reduction to our power costs, so negative 50% weapons power cost for 30 seconds, and then it's giving us a plus 20% fire cycling haste for 30 seconds. Now, if you click this guy here, the stock cooldown is 45. If you're running, even like on this build, I'm only running Photonic Officer 1. This is up constantly. It takes less than 30 seconds for this to cool down. So this trait is always running. That's why this is the number 1 trait to buy yourself if you're going to play this game. Because chances are you're not only, you're not going to start this game and say, I'm only doing science or I'm only doing Torp builds. Number 1, they're extremely expensive and they're extremely complicated. So, I mean, you might say that, but you're not going to probably be able to do it until you've gotten your feet wet in the game. And so this trait, it covers everything else. If it's not a Torp or a science build, your build has this every time, every single time. So definitely worth getting. The ship it comes on to is awesome, which is another plus when it's a good trait and an excellent ship. All right, next we have Strike from Shadows, and what this does is anytime you are damaging a foe that does not have you targeted to yourself for 30 seconds, you are going to get a huge threat reduction of 60%, which is excellent. Hey, don't look at me, enemy. That's essentially what it's doing. And you're going to get a plus 5% critical chance, which is a very nice boost, and you're going to get plus 5 bonus damage, which is pretty decent boost. And generally speaking, now if you're playing solo, chances are, like in a mission, I'm guessing if you are near an enemy, there's no one else to target. So I don't know how much this is going to matter. I run it all the time regardless. I'll have to look into that, but any kind of TFOs, generally, you're not going to be the only one being targeted unless you're the first one over there, and then as somebody else shows up, then they'll start to target them as well. So this is extremely effective on your cannon scatter volleys because you're hitting multiple targets as well, so those chances are even higher. But even on a beam overload build, I don't ever have a problem getting this boost and having it, fully maxed out the whole time. So this is number 2 on my top C-Store trait list here to have. Excellent trait. This can be used on pretty much everything. I use it on Psi builds, Torp builds, especially science builds, because they really draw a lot of aggro. And so that's sitting negative 60%. Threat reduction is just huge and really helps keep you alive. All right, next we have improved predictive algorithms. This is from completing your Intel specialization. This is on here because everybody can get it, and I had nothing else to put here. So you're getting some removal of debuffs on you, which is helpful against especially, Borg and other enemies that are, going to be putting a lot of debuffs on you. That makes that nice. You're getting some accuracy. I could leave this off and we wouldn't have noticed any difference. Let's just put it that way, but I didn't want any empty spots on this here. And there are other traits that I would definitely use on this build, but they're lowbie or, they're other expensive traits, and that's not what this build is. This is a budget build. Lastly, we are using improved unconventional tactics. This comes from your specialization, strategist specialization. Once you complete it, it'll give you this. And this is giving us a 20% bonus, all damage for 15 seconds for brace for impact. So we were talking about that earlier in regards to intelligence attaché. So essentially it's adding a damage boost, a Cat 2 damage boost to this ability here. So we've basically been able to turn 2 captain's abilities that generally are not damage boost related into very good damage boost that can be used very often. So this is a really good trait, especially for being free, and the specialization strategist that it comes out of is an excellent specialization as well. If you're doing tactical stuff in general, not science, you're most likely going to be running that specialization. So it's one of the smaller ones. It's only a secondary specialization. So I definitely focus on, getting that specialization filled out and getting this trait here. All right, space rep traits. So these traits come from progressing through your reputation, through the different tiers. Every time you hit a different tier, it unlocks different ones that are for ground and space. There's a whole video on that in the Beginner's Guide channel. If you're unfamiliar, definitely check out. If you're new to the game, check out the Beginner's Guide playlist that I have. It goes through all of these things I'm talking about, and brush over kind of the detail on each one. There's just too much to fit into a video. This video is most likely going to be like an hour long already. So if you're brand new and you need, more info about, the specifics on all of these different mechanics and layers in the game, there's videos on all of those. So definitely check that out. I'll throw it down the playlist in the description for you as well. That's where these traits come from. I am using precision. That's giving us plus 4% critical chance. We are using advanced targeting systems. That's giving us 16% critical severity. We're using Tyler's duality. This is giving us, on this particular build, 4.8% critical chance. And this scales off of the amount of hit points you have, with the maximum that you can get out of it, 7.5. And that would be at 200 hit points. 200,000 hit points, I'm sorry. And lastly, we are using magnified firepower, and that is giving us just an all-around weapons boost of 5%, and that's bonus damage. So very, very nice. I don't have many of the activatable space reps, and to be honest, I don't have. And what I do have, I'll use this, but the ones that I use the most, I don't have unlocked yet. The other follow-up videos I do to this are probably going to be on my. The high-end one's going to be on my paid account, and so we'll go over those when we get to that. If you're a beginner and watching this video for the the budget build, you may not have these unlocked anyways yet, but we'll get to that when we get to the higher end builds there. All right, so that is our traits. Let's take a look at our bridge officer seating. So we are using tactical team. I go back and forth on this. I don't even have it slotted. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. You don't see it there, so. In the past, there's been issues where it interrupts your fire cycling, with particular abilities. That may or may not have been fixed. I just don't notice any kind of difference from this. So slot it if you want to. I'm not saying don't. I just don't, because I just don't feel like I get anything out of it. And anyways, I got to fill the slot with something. So and everything else, there's enough tactical seatings in the way that I have this set up to where it just doesn't matter. I don't really have anything else that I can put there. So next I am using dispersal pattern beta 1, and this is to get additional mines out. And so the more mines that are out and the more targets I can hit with those mines, the more those mines are going to hold targets. And with the web console, the more plus 50% massive bonus damage we're going to get on all those items. So that's why we have this mine dispersal pattern. Otherwise, I believe this only drops out one, maybe one or two. The mine itself by itself. Let's look at that, because I didn't go over it. On the mine, how many does this drop out each time? Creates 2. So with the dispersal pattern 1, I believe that's going to give us a total of 4. So it'll give us 2 more by using that. So we're going to get double the amount of mines out by using this bridge officer ability. All right, next we are using recursive shearing 1. So 3 would be much nicer, but this is one of those weird ones where 1 fits in this slot, recursive shearing 2 and 3 fit in the commander slot, and this doesn't have commander for the specialization seating that this ship has, which is the temporal operative specialization. So what this does, let's take a look at it here. So I'll generally use this on larger targets or targets that aren't going to die right away. But essentially what it does, you'll have a target targeted, you will click on this, and essentially what it does is it allows your damage to build up as a secondary effect that's going to happen. So the effect of the level 1 of this is lower than what you would have, say, on the level 3 of it. But what it does is it stores 15% of stored damage from all the damage you're putting in, and I believe the damage your teammates are putting in. And what it does is it deals physical damage. So 15% physical damage of all the damage that you are doing to the enemy. And that can really, really add up on a large target. So this ability does pretty darn well. I'll see this used on dual beam bank beam overloads, on the high end, and you can just get some tremendous numbers out of this. Because if you put this on, say, a large target that you just started attacking, it's going to be alive for a little while. You're hitting beam overload, you're hitting, a bunch of your boost, your fire cycling, the M6 computer, and you're just pounding the enemy. You're just going to get a tremendous amount of stored damage. That 15% that's going to add up. Your total damage you're doing into a particular target over time. Because if you're firing on a target for, I don't know, some of those tactical cubes can take 30, 40 a minute, for them to go down, depending on the overall team. That's a lot of damage that you are going to be putting into it with this particular build, and you're going to get pretty good results from that. So that is recursive shearing. Next, we are using Chemosite Lace Weaponry 1, and this is giving us additional, or some radiation damage, not additional, but radiation damage to our weapons. This has a percentage for energy weapons, 10% chance to trigger, and on torpedoes, it triggers every time. So this really works well with the dark matter torpedo, especially with the dark matter torpedo having a damage over time effect as well. Next, we have Torpedo Spread 2. Since we have the torpedo up front, let's get the most, or the most we can get out of that with this bridge officer seating. And then obviously we have Beam Overload 3, as this is our primary attack mode. All right, engineering stations, emergency power to engines, and this is working in conjunction with a duty officer that when I click that, it recharges evasive maneuvers. So evasive maneuvers let you go really, really fast. It doesn't last very long, and then it has a pretty good size, I think 45-second cooldown. So if we just use that and, oh man, I need to go fast again, everything just died here, I need to get to the next spot, you can hit emergency power to engines and bam, that's immediately available again. So that's why we are running that. You don't get a real big speed boost from this by itself. So next we're using Let It Go, and this does some cold damage, which really doesn't end up adding up to very much. The main purpose of this is the negative 6.5 all damage resistance that it'll do to the enemy, and that is 6.3 damage or negative damage resistance every second for 20 seconds. So that stacks that 20 times. So if you're again using this on a large target, after 10 seconds, you're looking at a huge amount of damage resistance reduction, meaning all of your attacks are doing more damage to the enemy because they're less resistant to it. This comes from the event store for the winter event. It's pretty inexpensive. You can buy the stuff that you need in order to purchase this. It's like ornaments and different little Christmas goodies, but you can buy them off the exchange and purchase these for very inexpensive out of that event store. Next, we are using emergency power to weapons 3, and this is giving us the plus 16.6% bonus energy weapons damage. This is also good for cannons. So any kind of energy weapon. Cannons are energy weapons. They are not projectiles. So I get that question every now and then. And this is also triggering our trait emergency weapons cycle. All right. And let's also finish off on this one, plus 40% weapons power for 30 seconds. So, we have, even without that running, we have the maximum, and it's hard to say without like adding it all up individually how much overflow. So we have 120, a ton of overflow. And if I activate that, that's another 40 points into that. So we have lots and lots of weapons power. So that is very good on a beam overload. Lastly, we have auxiliary power to structural integrity, and this is giving us an additional amount of hit points and also all damage resistance rating. This is a really good heal. I like using this when I need to fill a slot. Reverse shield polarity is pretty good as well. While we don't focus on shields a lot, reverse shield polarity as a protect yourself clicky does very well, regardless of where you're set at on shields and what you have. So either one of those, this or reverse shield polarity, is a good placeholder if you need to fill slots or if you are just concerned with your survivability. Definitely take a look at those too. Lastly, we have Engineering Team 1. I really didn't have anything else to put here. Sometimes the Borg and other enemies can, disable your ship and do things. So it is nice to have it on there. Iconians are like the worst. So if you're going up against Iconians or something like that, having this it'll save you a lot of headache. if I didn't have this bridge officer station, this wouldn't be on the ship. So I wouldn't replace any of this other stuff for this based on my play style and how I like to set up my ship. Lastly, for science, we have hazard emitters. This is giving us a heal over time. It is also proccing additional critical severity from our specialization. I'll show you that in just a moment. And then lastly, we have Photonic Officer, and this is being used for our cooldowns. Photonic Officer 1 is giving us a reduction on our Bridge Officer cooldowns by 2% every second for 20 seconds. And I generally, if I had a, more science slots available here, I would be using my number one on science stations on builds like this is to use the highest level of Photonic Officer I can. So if the Lieutenant Commander slot was open, I would have Photonic Officer 2, or I would have 3 if I had the Commander slot open for that. This particular ship, I only have that. I did kind of toy with putting science up here because this is a universal slot, but it really wouldn't have made a difference because I wanted to have recursive shearing on the build. So that's why science is down here. If you said, you know what, I don't want to use recursive shearing, or you're doing a different kind of build and you're not using aux to bat, then I would put science up here and slot the Photonic Officer 2. All right. Okay, that is rep. So that covers the main part of the build. Let's just take a quick look at our duty officers. All right, so our first guy here, what's he doing? He is giving us 50% chance to reduce remaining recharge time by 5 seconds. What is he giving us a chance on? Special attack mode. So our beam special attack modes, which is going to cover beam overload. Anytime we activate that, we have a 50% chance to reduce the recharge time by 5 seconds. So we're just continuing trying to fill in the gap to keep these weapons up as long as possible, along with Photonic Officer. Because Photonic Officer, while it's good and it gives you a huge amount of cooldown, it does not keep your abilities up full time because this cools your abilities down for 20 seconds, but the cooldown on Photonic Officer is 30. So there's 10 seconds where this is not doing anything. So every now and then through the cycle, you run into a time where you're getting a regular cooldown tick on one of these items because this still has, say, 8 seconds left, but it's having no effect. So by running a duty officer like this, that's just helping us, fill in those gaps a little bit. If you were running a higher level of it, it'd be less of a problem. Or if you had like the Starship trait improve Photonic Officer, you could get 100% uptime on some of these items. Or if you're using aux to bats along with other things that extend it out, we're getting more into kind of the advanced stuff there. There's ways to get 100%, but just bear in mind that on the budget level, it's not 100%. You're going to have downtime on these, even with these cooldown reduction methods. So anything else you can do to help reduce those times will help you quite a bit. All right. Next, we have another one of the same thing. So I'm using 2 of these to give me, basically I should at least get, averages 1 of these proccing every time. If I get 2, great. So that's giving me another 50% chance to get 5 seconds off of that, thus keeping beam overload up even more. This is the bridge officer I had alluded to earlier that is working with emergency powered engines. So this comes from the Phoenix packs. Definitely recommend getting him right away. You can get him as soon as your duty officers are unlocked. Just get a Phoenix pack, go into the store and claim this guy. Definitely worth having. It'll just get you around the map, being able to use evasive maneuvers much more often by being able to cool it down with emergency powered engines. All right, next, when using an attack, beam overload, you have chance to cause all other attacks against that target 30% of the target's shield. Okay, so ignore 30% of the target shield. So essentially, you're just cutting through those shields much faster than you otherwise would. So if they have 100 shield rating, it's basically only 75 when this procs. First shot with beam overload has a 30% chance to increase targets bleed through by 30%. Wow. Okay. So if I'm reading that right, that means, let's see. So you have a chance to cause, okay. So it's just, it won't increase it. It looks like when you activate beam overload, when you have, let's read this again. Cause is it saying that I can get it twice? when you attack a target with beam overload, you have a chance. No, so it's just one. So the first shot out of beam overload, there's a random chance at 30% to increase the bleed through or ignore shields by 30% for 4 seconds. Okay. Okay. So it's just 30%. There's no extra stacking or anything like that. Glad we worked that out, guys. All right. And then I have one damage control officer. And what this does is anytime I'm using an emergency power to subsystem, so that's basically emergency power to engines or auxiliary power to structural integrity, that is giving me a 25% chance to reduce basically those similar abilities by 30%. And that also includes emergency power to weapons. So that gives us, again, it fills in that gap a little bit for when Photonic Officer is on its cooldown for that 10 seconds, not having any effects. That's going to help us mostly. The most important part is making sure that emergency power to weapons is staying up through that cycle. So this will help with that going. It probably wouldn't even hurt for me to actually slot like auxiliary power to structural integrity in my spam bar, because I'm only going to click this if I'm dying. And like in the run I did, I got in one spot where I needed to click it, but otherwise I'm not. I should put this in, and so it's in the rotation of constantly being clicked so that it's giving more opportunity to proc this duty officer. In fact, I'm going to make that change. So we're making the executive decision here. We're going to put auxiliary power to structural integrity in our spam bar and use that less for the purposes of healing yourself, because you're in the middle. This works best once you've left combat, right? So if you're in the middle getting your butt kicked, you just need to kill them as quickly as possible, or hopefully your team's coming in, you're able to reduce threat in some way. But by continuing to fire this off, we're going to have more chances of keeping this ability up even when Photonic Officer is on its full cooldown. All right, well, that covers all of our duty officers, and let's just, full disclosure, take a look at our endeavors. Again, this is my free-to-play account, and I could definitely be more diligent on this, but between, making videos and just having fun playing the game on my main account, I am not very high. These are important. I was able to get kind of the ones that were most important to me fairly high, and I do work on them when I can. If you're new to the game, hit these hard. Most of the time, they're pretty easy, and if you're new, a lot of this content is new and it's fun, and you can go about and do these objectives every day, and this adds just huge amounts of boosts to all of your characters, because this is account-wide global for all of that, and you get quite a decent amount of boost out of this stuff. Plus, they just extended it out too, so it does even more, and that's why some of these were actually maxed out, but now they're not, because they extended the maximum on these. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the ISA I ran. This is just a random I did with, I don't know any of these people. I just queued up and went in and did it, and it did pretty well. I was pretty surprised. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, and then we'll take a look at the parse. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the parse. So as you can see, this thing did really good. I mean, for being 100% free, with the exception of those 2 traits that anybody can purchase. So it's not from a, lockbox or something like that. Granted, if you're not spending any money on the game, that's going to take you some time to get those. I have spent $0 on this account. It's about 2 years old now. There's been events that have come up over the past year or two where you've gotten the free tier 6 coupons, and that's how I've gotten most of the traits that I have, or I've won them in giveaways or whatever it may be. So it's definitely obtainable, and you can do it fairly quickly, especially if you're proactive doing, watching streams and things like that. You'll find, a lot of times they'll give those kinds of things away. I've given quite a few of them away. They haven't had those up for sale in quite a while. But I will be giving away a tier 6 Infinity lockbox ship. We'll go over that in a second. Let's take a look at this parse here. So we did 101.94K with that. Not bad. The rest of the team actually did really well as well. So this was just a good run. Everybody, was helping a lot. I'll go into runs sometimes and it can be pretty bad, and I'm not judging, those people. They're in there just having fun, and that's totally cool. On a run like this went fairly quick. I mean, for just a pug run, I guess. I mean, generally we're doing these. If I did this in a team, this is going 2 minutes or less normally. But this was just a good run. It was fun. Everybody was doing their thing where they're supposed to be. And, it was a good all-around run. I mean, these guys here in the middle did very good. This guy didn't do a lot, but you're hitting 20K in this run. You're helping, okay? So, if you're down in the 5, watch these videos. Make it, you can do better. If you don't want to do better, that's cool. Play the game, have fun. I'm not one of those people who are going to be like, oh, what are you doing in here? You're only doing 5K. If you're in here having fun, then, it's mission accomplished. So, but everybody on this did very, very good. So that was a good team run from just strangers not communicating, just going for it. So let's take a look at the player analysis here. And while I double checked, I did hit the record button again. I did. Okay. I've gone through, like 10 minutes of recording before and realized I did not hit the record button. It's pretty frustrating, but I digress. All right, so our beam overload did the most amount of damage, which makes sense since that is the main damage function of this particular build at 22,000K, almost 23. Chemosite weaponry did really, really well at 13. This can kind of be all over the place, and I think most of that has to do with how well and how often you're positioning the ship to get off torpedo hits. So you'll probably notice, and I'm doing it with my hand, but you can't see it. I kind of nose in a little bit to my target so that it's within the torpedo firing arc, and I'm in the firing arc of the wide angle dual beam bank, but I'm still in a position where my back beam arrays are still firing. And sometimes I have to kind of nose in and out just a little bit to make sure that's happening, but I'm watching my torpedoes, and especially on the spread when that comes up, and I'm making sure the nose dips in, getting as many torpedoes off that I can. And Chemosite procs 100% of the time on torpedo hits. So when you send a torpedo spread 2, or if you add a torpedo spread 3, you're going to see Chemosite be much, much higher than even where it is here. So kind of pay attention to that, especially if you're running a torpedo and you're on a broadside build, you can maneuver and position, especially if you're on, let's say like the boss target. You don't have to just park straight sideways. You can really kind of get in an angle where your nose is in enough to where you can get those torpedoes out, or if you're having trouble, just kind of pivot it back and forth just a little bit, and that'll keep the fire cycling going from all of them, even if you're missing 1 or 2 here every other, second in between of doing that. But if you go direct sideways, full broadside, your torpedoes will not fire. So make sure you're just kind of nosing in a little bit so that you can get those torpedoes off. All right, next is, so our wide angle dual beam bank did 11K under beam overload 3. So you figure, that did almost half, or right about half of what the beam arrays did. Now, granted, this weapon is fully upgraded, and my beam arrays are only Mark 12 too. So, the weapons, more than half the weapons, including the mine on the ship, are just standard Mark 12s. We're still hitting over 100K. So that wide angle did very well, but again, bear in mind it is upgraded to Mark 15. I think it still will outperform any of those individually. But again, that's another piloting thing. This is, technically a broadside, but really we should call it like a broadside / corner build, because you really want to keep that nose dipped in so that weapon, and again, like I said, the torpedo is going off. Phaser arrays just under a regular firing mode did 8K. Trilithium enhanced phaser did very well. So that did 7, almost 8K. So it did more than all 4 of those other beam arrays. Again, bear in mind this weapon, because it comes off of other builds that I use that I've maxed out as much as I can. This is also fully upgraded compared to the phaser arrays. So don't poo-poo the phaser arrays. These numbers would be much higher if they were marked 15 and potentially better quality as well. So wide angle phaser did 5K under just regular firing mode. Pets, we'll come back to that in just a minute. Dark matter. So this is the secondary effect that dark matter torpedo does. So it does a kind of a stacking physical damage against the target, if I remember that correctly, and it did almost 4K. So it's a nice little bit. Some of these, when you're looking at some of these numbers, aren't real high, but they add up. So if you can be in the 2,000-3,000s plus through most of your list, with obviously your tops being much bigger than that, these numbers just really add up real quick. I was a little disappointed with kinetic shearing. I'll have to play with that a little bit more if we time that out a little bit better. Also, like I said, our group, we're burning through things pretty quick. That was a really good run. We might see more out of that if it were slightly a longer run or you had more time, especially with some of the larger targets. But at the end of the day, we want to get through it as quickly as possible. You were all doing the right things, and we don't want it to be a worse run because we want to see more out of a particular ability. But we'll have to experiment a little bit more with that. But I'm not sure. I was thinking about maybe doing some kind of hybrid science build with this too, because it's kind of a weird layout on this ship. I don't know. I think it's really going to shine as a tank is really what I think. So a basic, broadside / corner, beam overload build, or a tank. I think tank is its natural position. I think that's where it'll do the very best. But the seating on it's interesting, and with this specialization, it's kind of interesting too. So we'll see what else we can do with it. Like I said, there's going to be a series of videos that I'm going to do, just kind of exploring all the different things we can do with this. So the mine and the chain web projector, they both did not do very much. And as I stated when we were going through the gear, that's not really what they're there for. They're there to get us that extra 50% bonus damage, and that's pretty much the same with the rest of the abilities that are listed here. Their secondary effect is really what we went to use it for, and that's not something that's captured directly on the parse, right? Because, for instance, like with Let It Go, that's not there for the cold damage. It did 333 cold damage. Well, okay, it's nothing boosting that, right? It was there for the damage resistance debuff that we get. All right, let's take a look at pets here real quick to get this finished off. This is going to be a long one. Sorry again, guys, but I like to be as thorough as possible. I will put chapters in this so you can kind of skip through it. That makes it a little bit easier. But, I was talking to Augie the other night. I mean, there's just no way to do comprehensive whole builds like this without them being an hour long. It's just the way it is. So I hope that's okay with you guys. I've gotten a couple comments like, that could be shorter if, you cut out, X, Y, and Z, or they weren't even specific. But I'm just like, well, what part, You cut out a part, and then I guess I could cut out this part where I'm just talking about it. But anyways, I want to be as thorough as possible so you understand these builds, because you can copy this build and go, and if you don't understand how it works, it's not going to do anything for you. So, all right, our pirate distress signal and approaching agony, that's going to be our 3 pets basically, and they all did pretty decent for just kind of passive things here. So not too bad on the pets. Again, not a make or break on the build. All right, guys. Well, I hope that was helpful. Like I said, I know many of you are getting this ship, either have just got it or will have it here in the next day or two. So I hope that was valuable to you. If it is, please go ahead and consider subscribing to the channel. Thumbs up. If you have questions, concerns, anything to add to it, put those in the comments. Like I said, I am going to be doing a giveaway in the Discord, so join the Discord channel. A lot of resources in there, a lot of good people. A lot of people know way more than I do as well. So excellent resource, and it's good community just for hanging out as well. But I'm going to do the giveaway in there. It'll be under the giveaway tab. Join the Discord, go to the giveaway tab, and and you can enter to win the Tier 6 Infinity lockbox ship. So what'll happen is if you win, you'll be able to pick any of them, because I can't give you the box, I have to give you a ship. So if you're the winner of that, you'll just look through the list of ships that are in there, and you can pick anything you want, and I will send you that in game. So that most likely will run for 14 days, I think is the max time that I can do on the giveaway bot that's in there. So in any case, thank you guys very much for watching. Check out the Discord, and until next time, stay safe and have a good one.